He went missing in the woods. The creepy tape explains why. The tape started with wind and a voice. It was the kind of wind that sounded like trees talking, soft and steady and close. Then Evan said, calm and a little tired, "If anybody finds this, I'm fine. I'm going to check the sound." His breath came quick for a second. He laughed once, the kind of laugh someone makes to keep from being scared. The camera wobbled. A second later the picture jumped and the forest was all green and brown and the world tilted. Then the sound changed. The humming started low, not like a machine but like something living under the ground. Evan moved the camera toward it. He whispered, "Do you hear that?" He sounded excited, like a kid who finds a weird bug. The humming answered him back, like a long note on a flute. It made the leaves twitch even where there was no wind. Evan walked closer, and the trees leaned over him like a roof. He said his name into the camera so the tape would know who he was. "Evan Miller. Raven Creek." He smiled at the lens and reached out to tuck a loose branch. He filmed his boots, the dirt, a circle of light where his flashlight found a patch of moss. The humming got louder in the headphones they played the tape through. It felt wrong in your teeth. Then Evan's voice grew small. He turned the camera slowly and pointed it at something between the trees. The image was shaky, but there was definitely a movement, a dark shape that did not belong to a deer or a person. It stood straight like a tree trunk, but it had a head that tilted. Evan said, "Hello?" like he wanted it to be a person. The shape did not answer. Instead, the humming changed into something like whispering. The whispers sounded far away and very close at once. In the tape, the sound moved around the stereo like hands sliding across a radio. Evan took a step forward, and in the headphones, something stepped with him. The footsteps were soft but too many. They circled like someone walking around his tent. He laughed again, a thin laugh, and said, "Okay, that's weird." He turned the camera back on himself. His face was pale from the flashlight. "I'm going to go back," he said. "It's getting..." He stopped. The tape filled with leaves and a soft, regular tapping, like someone's fingers on a log. Evan whispered, "It's calling my name." He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, in a voice so low you almost missed it, he said, "It knows my name." He swallowed. The camera shook and the picture went dark for a second. A breath came into the sound, right behind the microphone, like someone standing so close you can feel their clothes. Evan turned. The tape caught only the black of the woods and then a shape rising up like smoke. Something said his name. The tape played it twice, like a child who is learning to say words. The sound on the tape was not like Evan's voice. It was thin and not fully human. "Evan," something whispered, the letters dragging out like mud. The hair on your arms stood up listening to it. Then the tape cut to static. The TV in the sheriff's office went white and the room filled with the little dots that feel like snow on an old TV. The sheriff looked up from the screen and did not look like someone who slept well. That was where the tape stopped the first time they played it for me. The screen stayed on static for a long, mean minute before they found the rest of the tape inside the camcorder. I had been at the county station because my friend Lisa worked the front desk. She called and said they had found Evan's campsite. I told her to be careful. I told her, like you tell someone a weather forecast, that the woods were quiet and that a lot of people's phones didn't work out there. She said, "Just come. This is different." She used the word like someone drops a heavy thing. We drove out in my old truck with the heat on low. The trees got taller the closer we went, like they were growing into giants guarding an old secret. People from the town had hung yellow tape across the dirt road. Searchers wearing headlamps walked in lines and called out names into the dark like they were trying to pull answers out of the air. The campsite was 2 days old, maybe more. The fire was still half burned, black wood warmed by the faintest heat. Evan's backpack sat on a rock, zipped closed. His water bottle was full. The camcorder was face down in the dirt with the strap wrapped around a root. They handed me the camcorder like it was a delicate thing. I turned it over in my hands and found the single tape inside. Someone had written, "Listen," on the outside with a thick marker. It felt rude to mark something someone left behind, like a sign in a museum. The sheriff said they found a small ring of disturbed earth a few yards away, like something had sat there and not moved. They fenced off the place, and the smell of wet pine filled your nose until you thought you would forget the smell of anything else. After the first time they played the tape, we watched again. The tape started the same way and then went farther. Evan was louder, more nervous, and the camera found his face again. He rubbed his hands like someone trying to get warm. He said, "It followed me back to the tent." He sounded small. He returned to film his tent. The tent flap was zipped closed. Inside, the light from his small lantern made the canvas glow. There were a few things: a map, a flashlight, his boots. Nothing else. He placed the camera on a log and set it to record himself. He said into the lens, "If I don't come back, this is where I got scared." He laughed in a way that did not reach his eyes. The tape held the small white of him, and then the sound moved outside like someone's breath passing a window. The same whispering filled the air. It was close to the microphone and far, split into many voices that sounded like they were practicing the same word. The word changed and sounded the same as it listened to itself. Evan sat up very straight and looked at the tent flap. He said, "Stop." The voice on the tape said his name again, softer now, like something trying to be friendly. He whispered back, "Who are you?" The tape caught something that made the person playing it feel the floor wobble, a slow, old laugh. It was not a laugh that meant someone was happy. It was a laugh like a creek that knows the shape of a bridge. He stood up and grabbed his jacket and his flashlight. The picture made his face large and close, and you could see his breath in the cold. He walked out, and then the camera showed the trees in front of him like tall audience members humming with the sound. He walked toward where the sound seemed strongest, the place the searchers later called the knot, because a lot of trees grew so close their branches twisted like a rope. From the camcorder, you can hear him say the name of the place under his breath, like a prayer or a dare. "Raven Creek," he said. "Quiet Woods." The tape showed him whistle once, trying to make it feel like an adventure. For a while, nothing happened but the trees and his footsteps and the humming making the leaves sing. Then the humming turned into language. It took the shape of words and then it gave them back as names you know, names of friends, names of towns, names of people who had died years before. Evan stopped. His face went like someone who has read a line in a book that should not be there. He bent to pick up a small blue stone, and the tape showed his hand shake. He held the stone up to the camera. Carved in the stone was a tiny line that looked like a mark, not a letter, not quite a symbol, but something older than writing. He turned the camera to himself, and the flashlight trembled. "I think it wants me to say something," he whispered. He tried to be brave and said, "Evan." The voice from the trees answered, but it did not say Evan. It said the name of my town, and then it said my mother's name. The skin on your arms crawled like tiny animals when you hear someone call a thing only you should know. My hands were on the camcorder now, and my heart was hollow with the feeling you get when the last piece of a puzzle slides into place, and the picture is worse than you thought. The tape went on, and Evan walked deeper into the trees. He sounded like a man trying a game, and then he sounded like a man who had regretted asking to play. He said, "That's not fair." Something answered, "Nothing is fair here." It repeated the phrase and then began to add things that were impossible, dates of people who had disappeared, the exact words someone had once said about leaving town, the name of a dog that had died before Evan was born. The camcorder shook like it was afraid. Then Evan stopped talking. The sound on the tape filled with small noises, footsteps, something like fingernails on bark, a breath that smelled like rain even in the recording. He whispered, "It's not an echo, it's calling my name." The whisper was so close and so small it made the air in the room thin. The tape held that moment longer than seemed possible, as if it wanted to make every listener feel how long Evan waited. And then something said his name again, not like the first times. It said it slow and strong and sure, the way someone says your name when they have learned to say it for a very long time. The voice did not sound like the wind anymore. It sounded like a chorus that had practiced for years. The camera fell forward. For half a second you saw Evan's face take a shape I cannot write without my mouth going dry. He was not afraid anymore, and he was not happy. He looked like a man who had remembered something terrible and had given up. Then the picture slid sideways and there was nothing but noise. The tape cut to black and the screen filled with white static that made your eyes close without asking. The sheriff turned off the player and the room felt full of ghosts, even though none of those ghosts were old or dressed in sheets. They were younger than that and quieter, like the sound of a clock with no numbers. The last thing the tape said before the static was not a word from Evan. It was a slow whisper that sounded as if it was right behind the person watching, saying something in a voice that had practiced human sounds for a long time. It said, "Listen." We sat in the sheriff's office and the heater clicked like it had something stuck in it. The sheriff cleared his throat. He looked at everyone there, and then at me and said, "We closed the trail." He did not say why, and he did not have to. The tape had already told us enough to make the woods feel like a mouth. That night I drove home and the road smelled like wet dirt. My headlights cut a white path through trees that were watching. I played the part of my life where I did laundry and tried to sleep, but the voice from the tape kept moving in my head. It whispered names I knew and names I did not. I kept thinking of Evan standing in the dark, hearing his own name come back to him not as a person but as something else. Before sleep took me, I remembered the last frame I saw on the tape, Evan turning toward the camera, his face lit thin and strange, and the shape of a small object in his hand. It looked like a stone or a tag. He held it up and the trees behind him made a sound like a thing being pulled from a pocket. He said one more thing, so soft I almost missed it on the speakers. "They asked me to listen." The tape went silent. The colors from the TV left the room like they were tired of the story. Outside, the quiet woods sat in the dark like a mouth closed over a secret. I did not know then that the tape would keep telling more. I did not know that what we heard was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to rain. It wasn't the soft kind that makes you sleepy. It was sharp and steady, tapping the roof like it was trying to get in. My phone buzzed once, a message from Lisa. "The tape played again last night." I stared at the words for a long time, wondering what she meant. The sheriff had locked the camcorder in evidence, sealed in a gray plastic bag with a tag. There was no way it could have been playing. When I called her, she sounded small. "We heard it," she said. "After everyone went home. It came through the speakers, even though the TV was off." She swallowed. "It said his name again. And then it said mine." The line went quiet. The rain filled the silence between us. By noon, I was standing outside the sheriff's office again. The sky was the color of tin. I walked past the front desk and down to the evidence room. The officer on duty looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. I told him I needed to see the tape. He started to shake his head, then stopped when the light above the door flickered. "Just a minute," he said, voice low, and unlocked the steel cabinet. The bag was still there. The tape inside looked harmless, just plastic and dust. The word "listened" still scratched across it in black marker. But the bag was warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight. He set it on the desk. "Don't plug it in here," he muttered. "If you're going to watch it again, take it far from town. We already had the power flicker twice this morning." So I did. I drove out of Raven Creek, past the old sawmill and the gas station that hadn't had a working sign in 10 years, and I stopped near the edge of the quiet woods, the same forest where Evan disappeared. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soft, the color of coffee. The trees leaned close like they'd been waiting. I set my laptop on the hood of my truck and inserted the tape. At first, it was the same footage, the humming, the trees, Evan's flashlight shaking in the dark. But this time, the tape didn't stop when it cut to static. It kept going. The sound turned into a low hum again, and the camera, somehow still recording, showed the forest, but from a different angle. Someone else was holding it. You could see Evan in the frame, standing near the knot of trees, looking up. His flashlight was dim now. His mouth was moving, but there was no sound from him, only the humming that came from everywhere and nowhere at once. He dropped the flashlight. It landed beam up, lighting his face from below. Then he spoke, only this time, the sound came through. "It's not just sound," he said. "It's alive. It's learning me." The picture warped, lines bending, colors smearing. For a few seconds, the camera spun wildly. When it steadied again, Evan was gone. The trees were swaying, though there was no wind. The lens focused on something in the dirt, that same blue stone with the mark carved into it. And then the screen went black. I waited for the usual static to end, but instead there was a quiet news sound. It wasn't humming this time. It was breathing. Slow, deep, human. "Turn it off," a voice whispered, not Evan's, not mine. Just close enough to feel real. I slammed the laptop shut and stepped back. The screen's glow leaked from the cracks for a second longer than it should have, like it didn't want to stop. I looked at the woods and thought, maybe the tape wasn't playing the forest. Maybe the forest was playing the tape. When I told Lisa, she said the same thing the sheriff had told her. The woods have been here longer than us, and they remember everything. That night, I dreamed about Evan. He stood at the edge of the trees, holding his camera, staring at something behind me. He didn't speak. He just mouthed one word. "Listen." When I woke up, I could still hear the hum, faint, but there. I told myself it was the fridge or the heater. But it didn't stop when I unplugged both. The next week, they closed Raven Creek entirely. The trails were blocked with wooden barriers. The signs read, "Environmental hazard, no entry." But everyone in town knew that wasn't why. People said hikers still went missing. That rangers heard voices calling from deep inside the woods, familiar voices. That they'd followed the sound once, only to find a small blue stone on the trail with their own initials scratched into it. And sometimes, when the night was windless, the sound of humming rolled out of the trees, soft, slow, calling names no one had spoken aloud in years. I moved away after that. I never went back to Raven Creek. But one night, about a year later, a small padded envelope arrived at my new apartment. No return address. Inside was a flash drive, no label, no note. When I plugged it into my computer, there was only one file. Its name was listen_2.mov. For a long time, I didn't open it. But the curiosity sat in my chest like a heavy stone. Eventually, I clicked play. The screen lit up, and I saw my own truck. Same color, same license plate. The camera was filming from the woods, as if someone had been watching me that day when I played Evan's tape. Then, faintly, the humming began again. It grew louder, until it was right behind me. And over it, one voice rose clearly, calm and certain. It said, "You heard me once. Now it's your turn." The screen went black. That night, I packed everything I owned and left before sunrise. No matter how far I drove, the sound followed, faint, like a memory you can't unhear. And sometimes, when the world is quiet and the wind dies, I still catch it whispering through the trees outside my window. It doesn't say my name anymore. Now it says yours. Listen.